And again, welcome to the Candidate Forum, sponsored by the East Peoria Chamber of Commerce. Candidates for the office of Mayor and City Council all received invitations to this forum, along with very specific instructions from the Executive Director, which will be followed today. To begin, each candidate will have 1 minute for an introduction. Following that, candidates will be invited to individually respond to a set of 6 questions prepared by the Chamber's Board of Directors. Questions have already been sent to the candidates in advance of today's event. As each question is asked, we will rotate the order of the first response among the candidates. Each candidate again will have 1 minute to answer, and the time will be strictly monitored by our timekeeper, Blake Barnard, who will give you an indication that your time is up. We weren't sure how we were going to work that sign in this morning, but it worked out well, didn't it? Mayor, when he calls, you tell him we have it in hand, okay? We really don't wish to show any candidates any disrespect, of course, but in the interest of time, 1 minute is 1 minute. And the Chamber asks that we move on to the next candidate should the time be up. Unfortunately for all of you in the audience, the Chamber asks that you refrain from comments or from asking questions at this event. If you have specific questions for a candidate, please feel free to contact that candidate outside of today's session or in any other forum that they might take place in this election season. Candidates, we definitely want to thank you for being here. Would everyone please welcome our candidates this morning? It's nice to have so many people who would like to serve our city, isn't it? That's a great showing for us. So to begin, we'll start with Mr. Call, and we'll go down through the line. Would you please give us 1 minute introductions? There are some microphones in front of you. Like Mr. Call has done, you'll probably have to grab it and pull it close so that you can be heard. John?
Very good. I'd just like to start by thanking Rick and Scott and the Chamber of Commerce and all of you folks for taking time out of your schedule today to come listen to us and get our perspective on how we're going to answer the 6 questions that have been laid out in front of us. But 53-year-old married father of 4 children, native of East Peoria. I'm a Marine Corps veteran of the Gulf War. Currently a territory manager for a company called Cisco Guest Supply. I'm a commissioner of public health and safety here on the East Peoria City Council, currently finishing up my first term. Chairman of the Tazewell County Consolidated Communication Board, and I serve as a volunteer with the Teresa Tracy Group, which is close to my heart. And I'm looking forward to not only this forum, but the forum coming up on the 13th and the next 30 days ahead. So I see a number of people in this room. I've already been out engaging in the community, and I'll continue to do so. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Call. Mr. Jeffers?
Hi, I'm Tim Jeffers, and finishing up my 3rd term, 12 years here on the City Council. And one thing that happened with my wife and I when I was first elected, what we realized pretty quickly was this threw us into a whole new people group. The Chamber, number one, is very much a change or an addition to our lives, and we really appreciated that. It also threw us into the hundreds of city employees around. Not that I interact with every one of them all the time, but it threw us into that people group, as well as expanded our time of knowing those in the community. I really count it a pleasure to serve these last 12. During this time of my service, I've had a chance to retire from Caterpillar after 38 years. And during my last 12 years, all 4 of our grandchildren have been born. So time has marched on for us and our family. But it's a pleasure to be here today, and a pleasure for the opportunity to offer myself as a candidate for mayor. I think there's good days ahead for East Peoria. I think we'll prove that out, and I look forward to having the opportunity of giving. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Decker?
Hi there. My name is Dan Decker. I think most of you know me. I remember 12 years ago sitting here, the room was full just like now, had a great turnout. First of all, I appreciate the work that the Chamber does to put this event on. There aren't many opportunities for us to get in front of the public, and I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you coming out, taking an interest in who wants to serve on the City Council. As I said, most of you know me. I am a firefighter. I am proud of that. 23 years so far. My father was a firefighter. I have been born and raised in East Peoria, and I love the city of East Peoria. I really enjoy what I do, and I've enjoyed the 12 years that I've been on the council. I want to take this opportunity, in case I don't later, to thank my wife and kids. I think one of the toughest things about serving on this board is the amount of time it takes away from your family. I love my wife and I love my kids, and it's difficult sometimes when I have to go away from things to leave them, but I appreciate their support.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
Hello, I'm Mark Hill. I too would like to thank the Chamber for today's event. I'm an East Peoria native. I was born and raised here. My wife of 31 years is also an East Peoria native. We've raised our 4 children here in East Peoria. I graduated from East Peoria Community High School. I went on to get a double major in computer science, business administration from Eureka College, and then later as a working adult and father of 4, I went back and got my MBA at the University of Illinois. First half of my career, I was an information technology consultant, and the last half, I've been with Caterpillar in various roles. For the past 20 years, I've been a certified project management professional. As the name would imply, in dealing with teams, projects, and delivering results. Many of you may or may not recognize me. I've been on the East Peoria Zoning Board of Appeals for the 19th year now, and I've been in other capacities with the Teresa Tracy Treasurers for East Peoria Community Baseball.
Thank you. Mr. Matheny?
Hello, my name is Steve Matheny. I moved here in 1992, and I chose to live in East Peoria and stay in East Peoria. I love the community. I have raised 3 children here. I'm engaged to an East Peoria resident. On March 31st, we'll get married. I've been on the school board for 14 years and appreciate everything the community has given me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Mr. Salem?
My name is Norm Sales. I'm a lifelong resident of East Peoria, Illinois. I can remember the day when East Peoria was the stepchild on the other side of the river. And we've certainly made a lot of progress in that amount of time. This will be my first term serving in any political office. I'm retired. I spent the last years of my employment, 22 years with DHL Express, and worked in numerous locations, and was actually in 5 different countries, and worked in Chicago, which made me more appreciate the city of East Peoria and the small town community that brings to us. So,
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland?
I'm short and sweet. My name is Mike Sutherland. I have a couple of small businesses here in town. I've been grooming them along for quite a few years. I'm 61 years old. I've never lived anywhere else. I have a little hardware store and a small excavation company. And I would have to say that I would hope that I bring business to the city as far as thought and how we do things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mingus?
My name is Seth Mingus. Like the other candidates, I'd like to thank the Chamber and thank all of you for spending a few hours with us to get to know us. Personally, I'm married to my wife, Patricia. I have 3 kids, Julia, who is 11, Jolie's 9, Lincoln's 4. That keeps us pretty busy with youth sports and involved in schools, which is where I know some of you guys from. Professionally, I'm the superintendent and principal at South Pekin Grade School. This will be my 4th year doing that. Prior to taking that position, I worked at Pekin Community High School for 5 years. I was a dean for a year. What an interesting job, be a dean at a high school. Mr. Boyce can probably tell you about that. And then after being a dean for a year, I was moved up to be the assistant principal for curriculum. Prior to being at Pekin Community High School, I worked at East Peoria, worked at East Peoria District 86 as an 8th grade teacher, taught U.S. history, 1 class of reading, and then coached a variety of sports. Was the athletic director. Went to East Peoria High School, lifelong resident like many of the candidates. Went to so thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on to the questions now, and we'll start with Mr. Call. Candidate, what is your opinion of the commission form of government versus the city manager form of government?
Sure. Excellent question, and I know this has been a topic of discussion in the city dating back to, I'd say, midsummer of last year. Personally, I'll answer the question first. I actually support the commission form of government. It's a form of government that East Peoria's had for its 100 years since it was incorporated. And then prior to that, the village of East Peoria had it for 2 years. They had adopted it. I think it's a very efficient, effective way to govern. Obviously, you have a 5-member council versus many other communities with a much larger council, so decisions could be made much quicker. With that being said, I know last August, there were 2 different resolutions brought forward seeking to put a referendum on the ballot and allow the voters to decide whether or not to change their form of government. One was city manager, which is part of this question, and the other one would have defaulted our government to aldermanic. But I think with the right people in place, it's a great form of government, served us well.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffers?
I believe both the commissioner form and city manager form have their advantages. Currently, we have a commissioner form that's served us well over these last, as Commissioner Paul said, over nearly 100 years. And it has the advantage of putting the elected officials at the grassroots level in their departments where they oversee, right down there to know the word, work with staff very closely. I think that's served us well. It has its positive points very much, so it helps us make decisions more quickly. City manager form has a person that's hired by the council, and that person is overseeing the city as a whole, making recommendations back to the council to make recommendations and take action for the city. That's in a nutshell how it works. And so really, you accomplish the same thing managing the city either way. I believe really it comes down to the quality of people. Whichever form the city chooses to go with and have its quality of people. You can have very good people, you can have people that make poor decisions. And so I think both can serve us well, and I can serve well with either one as mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Decker?
Thank you. I think you can look around East Peoria and see the progress that we've been able to accomplish over the last 30 plus years. We've taken huge leaps to where we were. I think a lot of that has to do with commission form of government. East Peoria is always, I guess, appreciated for the quick action that we can take. And a lot of that is because of the commission form of government. Having said that, there are challenges. I think having the right people in place is extremely important. The argument between commission or city manager, the reason I gravitate toward commission is because that person is elected by the people. Under city manager form of government, that person also is over the departments and has sole discretion over the departments, but they are hired by the city council. So I like better that the person in charge is elected by the people. There are other forms of government to consider, however, but I have always been an advocate of commission.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
Okay, as admitted, I've already stated, just when I look at this question, I look at a couple aspects of responsiveness and accountability, professional management, and effective and efficiency. And when we start to look at it from that perspective, some of the points that have been made, with the right people in those positions, I think the private sector or individuals that are, private sector individuals that are wanting to contribute, the right ones can serve as a consultant, and as has already been pointed out, they have direct accountability to the voters. So I believe that the commissioner forum with the right people with the skills that can be a value add to those departments, and they are closer to the details.
Thank you. Mr. Matheny?
I'll make it unanimous so far. I support the commission form of government, and I think it is the most efficient way, and the evidence is all the tremendous things that have happened in East Peoria in the last 30 to 40 years, especially. I do think that when the commission form of government does not work, it's when the commissioners are not just overseeing the department, but rather thinking they're in charge of the department.
I also feel that the commission form of government is the best form of government. Number one, because it's not an elected position, as a city manager would be non-elected. In addition to that, I feel for the size of East Peoria, that East Peoria is just going to be a resume builder for a city manager that's going to be here for short term to build his resume and then move on.
Well, I guess I'm gonna maybe disagree with some of the people up here because I have no problem with the form of government that we have now. There's more governments to choose from than just the commission form. There's the automatic, there's two or three other different ones. I have a problem with the commissioners under the form of government we have by statute, that they have to take control of their departments. And I don't believe that they are always making the correct decisions in their departments. I think that it needs to be 5 people looking at each department and making recommendations. I just wish there was a way to curb the power of the single commissioner in each department. Other than that, I have no problem with it.
I think that both commissioner, form of government, and city manager, form of government have merit and probably should be looked at. Personally, I think the city of East Peoria has done a good job since it's had the commissioner, form of government, and I'm not saying that I think anything needs to be changed right away or changed at all. But I do think that all organizations, if they're going to continue to be successful, need to analyze what they're doing and constantly be evaluating whether or not what they're doing is the most efficient and effective way to do it. And I'm not saying that commissioner form is or isn't, but if elected, one of my goals will be to look at that and continually analyze what we do at the city to always make sure we're doing things the most effective and efficient way.
Thank you. The second question will begin with Mr. Jeffers, please. If you look back on the past 5 years of council votes and decisions, what decisions would you have made differently and why?
Well, let me first say that 12 years here, there's been a lot of them, a lot of decisions. Let me highlight 2 before I actually answer the question completely. There's 2 decisions that I want to highlight. First one is the expanded capital fund that we voted in very early in around 2007, 2008 timeframe, which allowed for the capital expansion at the junior high as well as the high school. I think that was a wonderful example of a good decision. Number 2, the levy district expansion, or actually creation, and the whole development area that we've seen, I think is another good decision that I vote for again. The levy district with the investment of the city, the return on investment right now is giving us $1.5 million a year. By the year 2028, that return on investment will be approaching $8 million annually, which if you think about it, will be double what we ever received annually from Riverboat Gaming. And with gaming dropping off, this is proved to be a quite investment for us the days ahead. No, there's really no decisions I made that I would change after those last 5 years, if any consequence.
Thank you. Mr. Decker?
Thank you. This is tough. The toughest part is trying to come up with something that I can talk about for 1 minute. In looking at some of the different decisions, one that has troubled me, and just troubled me recently because I've started noticing a trend that is concerning. First of all, toters, recycling, some of the recycling practices that we've had, as well as cleanup weeks. We have always in East Peoria had 2 cleanup weeks. This year, we went to 1. I'll get back to why in a second. Also, some of our recycling practices, we've gone to citywide toters, and we're going to make it mandatory for everybody to have toters. And I think that's a good decision until I recently noticed that we've had an increase in the amount of trash pickup, the tons of trash per year, and actually since 2015 we've had a decrease in recycling. This is something that I've noticed just in the last few days, so it's something I think we need to look at, and that's one thing that's making me concerned. So we'll look at that very near future.
Okay, I guess it's easier for me to find something. Actually, back in the end of 2015, an early retirement buyout was proposed, and the original offering was 29 employees, and it had a dollar amount, and it had a bunch of assumptions. And then through all of 2016, and actually through most of 2017, when the ordinance actually got applied, the actual cost to the city was, for all that time, was undetermined or could be definitively determined. And in the end, it was sold as a the city with the cost in the initial letter said it was 575 grand, 600 grand anyway. In the end, I don't know that we got a true cost of that buyout, and question whether we did. It was full of assumptions that all 29 people would be hired, and the assumption was that those 29 would be replaced at step 1 level. So that is a decision that I would like to see redone, some net present value and some actual definitive numbers before the decision is made.
Well, when I looked at what we've done in the last 5 years, I think we've done a lot of tremendous things. I had a hard time with the question because I think hindsight's 20/20. But I would like to have seen in the last 5 years especially a little more emphasis on the roads. I think that's a primary responsibility of the council and the city, and our roads are in terrible shape.
In September of 2015, we had Northern University do a study on the city organizational analysis. They came back with several suggestions, and I don't really feel that the city has implemented or took that very serious, because most of the things that they indicated have not happened. And then most recently, there's all this talk about roundabout, and everybody that I've talked to isn't in favor of this roundabout. It's going to cost us $300,000, and I feel that money could be better spent on fixing and maintaining our roads.
This is a tough question for me because I wasn't involved in the past. There's a couple things that I would undo, and that is the roundabout. It makes no sense to me at all at the bottom of Springfield Road. And that affects me and my family because we own the property at the bottom. I don't have no part of it. The direction as far as the roads and stuff, that was a good one, because I don't think I think that's a budget thing, and I believe that they should have taken better care of that and maybe have spent their money for the people. Because I'm infrastructure, safety. That's my whole life. And I think that's what this city should be about, and I think in doing so, that brings people here. Like, I think Peoria's gonna have a problem with the rain tax. We should run from that. That'll drive people over here. So I think that that's a decision that's coming up, and I think the other one was, real quick, is I think that we should have brought before the city voters what form of government we want. I think that still needs to be brought up.
This was a tough question for me as well for two reasons. One, as Mr. Matheny said, hindsight's always 20/20. It's always easy to look back and say you should have done something different. And two, having sat on multiple boards and also being in administration, I also know that oftentimes the public cannot be informed of exactly what happened in every situation for confidentiality reasons and those reasons. So as I look back, I think I would, all of those are good answers. The answer that I thought of that came right to my head at first was the way the commission form versus city manager form of government is handled. I'm still not sure exactly where I would land on that. I'd like to research that and look at that from the inside. But I think that voting to put it on the ballot and voting to put it off the ballot seemed, maybe it was the right decision to do at the time, but it seemed a little disorganized and maybe probably could have been handled in a little bit better way. As I said earlier, I like to analyze things, research things, and then come to a decision, not come to a decision, research, analyze them, and then change it.
Thank you. Mr. Call?
Yeah, I personally, looking back, I've only served the last 4 years on the council, but I've been actively involved for the last close to 9 years now. I'm proud of my record. I look back on the last 4 years, the things that we've had come across our table. I've always made my decisions by giving due diligence, fiscally responsible, and I always consider the best interests of the citizens at heart when I make my decisions. I know the early retirement was brought up. City had to take out a loan of $2.5 million. I still, to this date, think that was a mistake. We did replace most positions at higher wages. That's a fact. We'll never know the complete numbers, but what's done is done. it's time to move on to other things. There have been some employee and personnel decisions, employee settlements, and some personnel decisions that I have not agreed with that affect the city. But my record, I stand by my record.
Thank you. This next question will start with Mr. Decker. What do you see as the biggest obstacles when examining commercial and residential growth opportunities for the city?
I think it's obvious, the city of East Peoria is landlocked. We don't have a lot of land to expand. River on one side with all the communities around us. That obviously an obstacle. We only have so much potential development. Having said that, some people talk about our taxes and they talk about our schools. First of all, our schools are, in my opinion, some of the best in the area. You can't find a high school in central Illinois with as much opportunity for college classes as East Peoria High School has. And as far as your tax rate, our taxes in the city of East Peoria, we have actually kept flat for close to 20 years. And the value people get for that money is incredible. But I think if you look at one thing that could hold us back, and that's infrastructure. I really appreciate these guys talking about streets. It's something that I have been hounding on for 12 years. We have to put more money into our streets. We have to put more money into infrastructure in general.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Decker had some points that I actually also share. Anybody that has seen our land use, obviously we're landlocked. There's some opportunities on the north and south of our city as far as where we have still not, but the landlocked would be an issue, and I see that as a challenge to the residential growth. From besides the geographical, I think the financial challenges of our city are also, from a commercial perspective, going to be a hindrance. Our debt schedule this year, so 11 million, and then that debt schedule doesn't get real favorable until something like 2028, really better at 2033. So I think that debt schedule is going to be impacted as it relates to infrastructure and expanding what we would need in that area as well.
I think the city has done a good job in the past. I think we need to continue to work with developers and the commercial and business owners and to make sure that we're business friendly and help to increase their business by bringing more customers to them. And residentially, I know there's three different areas where we have residential lots started and houses on those lots and a lot of empty lots next to them. So I think we need to try to see if we can't help those developers fill those lots with homes.
I again think that the most important thing in the city in the near future is working on our infrastructure. As we all know, as soon as your infrastructure starts crumbling, property values go down. So that's going to be less tax revenue for us, and the attractiveness to outside possible residents and outside possible businesses becomes much less attractive. And if we don't fix this infrastructure, I'm concerned that we're going to be on a downward spiral. And that's, would be a direct conflict of the growth that we've had in the last 30 years.
Okay, well, I kind of agree with the general direction the city's gone for quite a while, but I have a problem with any city giving things away to bring the company in. I think if the company thinks that they're going to make a profit here or have a business here, then they should come on their own. Illinois is one of the worst places in the world to be right now as far as taxes goes. I think we really need to work on that. I think my whole campaign is infrastructure, safety. That's it. That's what it's all about. I think that once we get down to the basics and we take care of what we've already started and what's already there, that's got to be the way we go. Taxes is a big thing. It's going to knock us down if we're not careful. Once again, the rain tax, it's coming. All the little communities are going to do it. Not a good deal.
I'll echo as far as residential growth. I think that landlocked is an issue for us. We have trouble expanding because of our geography. I think that residential growth, though, as far as filling those lots and putting homes on empty lots in neighborhoods that we do have, I think that's connected to our commercial growth. I think one of the big selling points for East Peoria is all the commercial stuff that we have here. And I know I live, obviously in East Peoria, I can drive to a Target, I can drive to Walmart, I can get to Washington, Peoria, all within 7 minutes, and I think that that's huge. I do think a challenge with commercial growth is that we don't want to grow too fast. I think that East Peoria has done a great job of growing, but our infrastructure hasn't kept up. And it's not just roads, I mean, there's things, water lines and sewer lines that we can't see that are getting older as well, and as you get bigger, there's just more and more of those to keep up with. So I think we need to continue to grow, but I think we need to grow within reason, to make sure that we're not growing too fast, and we're not hindering people from wanting to come to this community.
Sure. In regards to some of the challenges, it's already been mentioned, it's no secret, the aging infrastructure, condition of our roads, and I believe it was Commissioner Decker mentioned property taxes. Our property taxes are high. There's not a single soul that lives here that doesn't think that. Our debt schedule was mentioned, $122 million is that load, and it doesn't cut in half until 2028. So I think whatever we do moving forward, we have to do it in a fiscally responsible manner. We have no choice. It's about priorities as well. We do talk about the need for street maintenance, additional funds for streets. We've got to set those priorities accordingly. We have to allocate the proper funds each and every year. There's opportunity for commercial and residential growth. And personally, I'm going to be very proactive in seeking both, but do so in a responsible manner.
My view is the city's well positioned for growth, both residential and commercial. East Peoria offers safety and a great quality of life features which draw people, in my view. We're poised for growth with our school systems. I think they're ready for it, for growth. District 86 has a comprehensive plan that is being unveiled, and that is set to make us more efficient there as a school district. The school districts work together. We have complete fire protection. That asset is there. The Pinecrest, Springfield Mill Road area on the south is poised for commercial and residential development. The Summit extension is poised already for commercial and or residential. And then we also have North Main, which has space for large commercial development as it comes our way. So I believe we have the table set. Our capacity for water and sewer is there for growth, for large growth that comes our way. But in my view, the biggest obstacle to our growth is the state of Illinois. We need a business and family-friendly environment. And the state of Illinois just has to do their part to make that happen.
Thank you. The next question will be given first to Mr. Hill. Do you believe compensation of city employees is too low, too high, or about right?
One of the things you wouldn't know about me is that I'm an analytical, logical kind of person. So when I look to answer this question, I went back 12 years to look at our aggregated salaries versus even our cash revenues that came in. I'm a little concerned that over that 12-year period, they average, they range from 50 to 90%. One year is 90% of the salaries. That itself doesn't answer the question. So then when I went and pulled the available salary information by role, my police officer, fireman, accounts payable, administrative, street and sewer, and then used a salary tool to compare. So my findings were that most were just right, but there are some that are running on the high side compared to economical, regional salary information.
I think that's a difficult question to answer in the sense that I don't know that the public sector can ever compete with the private sector in what we're paying our people as far as the salary goes. But then you have to look at the entire benefit package that you get when you work for the public and in public service. And I think when you look at that total package, we can be competitive. So right now, without more information and without delving into it more, I would think that our salaries are just about right.
I would agree with that also. Looking around at our neighboring communities, we are competitive, especially when you consider the benefit package that goes along with that, and of course, the early retirement age versus the private sector makes those very attractive, very well-paying jobs.
I'm union. I'm an operator. I've worked with probably 100 different communities across this state. I've worked side by side with the city of East Peoria's guys on many of jobs, and they're in the top 5% every time. They do a great job. They don't abuse or use their powers of which they have to benefit anybody but us, all of us here. And I think that their wages are exactly where they should be. No one ever gets paid enough. Everybody will say that, including me. But they're not getting cheated in any way, shape, or form, and I would quit working for the operators in a moment to come work for the city, wage for wage, which I'm too old to do, but I would.
I agree. I think our city employers are paid, their pay is right on where it should be. I agree with Mr. Sutherland. I'm proud of our city services. I'm proud of our city workers. They do an excellent job. I will say, it's easy sometimes to be hard on public employee salaries because they're posted on the website. So it's easy to look on that and say this person makes X amount of dollars, where Mr. Matheny pointed out, well, private sector isn't like that. Nobody knows what private sector employees' salaries are. I will also say, as somebody who hires public sector employees, one of my biggest things that I want to do is attract and retain quality candidates. And in order to do that, you have to pay a competitive wage. So if you're going to attract and retain quality candidates, you've got to be willing to pay them well to have the quality services that we have. And that's something that I think we should continue to do and something that I'm proud of.
Well, I guess I'll be brutally honest. I broke it down to two groups. You have represented and non-represented. And the fact of the matter is, when you compare public versus private, the average household income in East Peoria is a little over $50,000. So just put that in perspective. I've defended the fact that the city pays the higher wages that they do offer. We have excellent pay and benefits. We have excellent employees, and we offer quality services with quality employees. With that being said, the question is, do I feel it's too high, too low, or about right? Those that know me and those that have gotten to know me over the last 4 years, I would argue that we're at the ceiling on the represented side. You have to be able to afford people to show up to do the job. You have to be able to afford the equipment, as well as meet the needs of the community. When you look at comparables, East Peoria is the highest outside of Chicago. It's just a fact. The numbers don't lie. But the non-represented, when you look at comparables, I'd say we're on the low side.
Thank you.
East Peoria is a prevailing wage city or employer by definition, and as noted, a good majority of our employees are represented by bargaining units. And all those contracts are essentially covered by arbitration as well. So that is a given, but on the positive side, our recent contracts, and that really is positive too, we pay a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. On the positive side, recent contracts have included tiered starting wages to help lower our costs. Job duties have been adjusted to raise productivity. Skilled trades are difficult to hire and get, and we are encouraging in-house training to develop those skilled trades within our city. We're doing that now. Our healthcare expense, the increases in our healthcare expense, more than half of the increase is being paid by our employees. It's not all free by the city. So they have stepped up and are helping keep our costs shared in that way. And they're actually falling behind, but that's the nature of healthcare today. We do monitor the job market overall, to be competitive, and to attract quality employees. I believe overall, the whole picture, we're about right.
Don't have a lot of time to talk about individual jobs, so I'm going to talk about two specifically. We have two employees in the city of East Peoria that I think are paid too low. First of all, our IT department. Not long ago, we lost our head IT person And the brutal, honest answer is because we pay him too little. He took a better paying job, and that is an extremely important job in the city of East Peoria. We have another IT person that I'm afraid we're going to lose very soon if we don't pay him more money. I think it's something we have to look at. IT is still an up-and-coming, growing sector, and I think it's important to treat them accordingly. And second, our HR. HR, we have one person in the city of East Peoria, 200 plus employees, and we only have one HR person. That person is paid, I guess, close to average for the area, but when you take into account that there's only one for so many employees, we should have 3 or 5, or 3 to 5. So I think we either need to hire more or pay that person quite a bit more.
This next question will start with Mr. Matheny. Do you favor a reorganization of city departments, and if so, what would be your plan?
Well, thank you. I don't know that I've got enough information to make that decision yet, but what I can promise, if elected, is that one of the questions that I always ask the high school board about is why we're doing it that way, and if there's a better way to do it. I think that's a question we have to continually ask. And I think part of that is, as tight as our budget is right now, that's a question that we really have to look at as a city, if there isn't better ways to do it, to consolidate so that we can hopefully reduce expenses.
I'll refer back to the Northern Illinois University study. One of the shortcomings that they came up with is that we have low morale among our city employees due to the facts of the different levels of accountability depending what commissioner would be over your department. So I think that's something that definitely needs to be looked at. And in my opinion, you know, there's nothing wrong with the commission of form of government to allow a certain commissioner to be over a certain department. But I think on major decisions, important decisions, there should be a general consensus among the setting council and mayor to make those decisions.
Well, the question was, do I think that departments need to be shook up? The answer is no. I think that if anything needs to be shook up, it's the infrastructure inside of each department. The departments shouldn't be changed unless there's a change of government, and maybe even not so at that point. I believe that accountability is everything inside the department, and once again, here we come to the form of government with the commissioner, that I think that a lot of the hands are tied inside of each department. It depends on the whims of the commissioner. I believe that has to end. I think the power of the commissioner that can hire and fire and do it pretty much as he pleases in each department has to come to an end. Whether it's an agreement within the system that we have now or a new system.
I'm not an expert on all of the departments. I mean, we know how they work, but having not been on the inside yet, I don't know if I have enough information to say 100% yes, they should be shaken up, or no, they should stay exactly the same. But what I can say, I'll go back to the commission form of government versus city manager form of government answer that I gave. I think all organizations, if they're going to be successful, have to constantly be evaluating what they do and how they do it. And that would not be any different for me when it comes to looking at the departments that the city has. I think that you look at best practices of other communities, other government entities, you take input from staff, you take input from the management, and then you look at that and you analyze it and you make a decision if departments need to stay the same, or if maybe there need to be some changes. But I think that that's a process, it's a strategic process, and it's not something you do in 6 months or a year, it's something you do over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I believe as elected officials, we all have an obligation to make sure that we deliver the current services that we offer in the most cost-effective and efficient manner as possible. And part of that is always reviewing whether or not your organization is set up as such. As the Commissioner over Public Health and Safety, the Chief Knapp had asked that the fire department be reorganized for the first time in couldn't tell you how many years. So we created 2 deputy chief positions, and I stand by the decision. And here's why. Those positions were 24/48, 24 on, 48 off. One was the fire marshal. State law requires us to inspect businesses on an annual basis. We have over 900 here in the community of East Peoria. Customer service just wasn't there for that position. So we created a deputy chief of fire, which was the right thing to do. We also know that most calls are EMS related. There's a lot of admin involved in that. So once again, we created a deputy chief over EMS, which will reduce the overtime cost and help us operate more efficiently. Thank you.
Mr. Jefferson.
The city has made numerous changes in structure over the last few years. As an example, East Side workers are now really covering the bulk of the labor for Festival of Lights. That's a big change that's taken place over the last few years. Public Works has reduced several manpower positions due to productivity and reorganization in our department. We've reduced costs, our bottom line, by a great number of dollars as well. Water and street departments, for example, are sharing equipment. And actually, they work together. Maybe you didn't think they didn't. We already did it. They work together sometimes on joint projects, such as installing a water line together. And so we've done that in the last few years in Public Works, and it's really working well. In some manner, this is, I guess, a suggestion I have, and I bring this out maybe every year I've done the council. I still believe the police department could or maybe should incorporate an auxiliary police force to work alongside our force in, for example, East Side sporting events, crowd control for the 4th of July, Festival of Lights Parade, et cetera. I think that's a nice community-friendly thing we can do to save money and actually give us better coverage.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm always looking at, or at least willing to look at reorganization. I'm not really one who believes that we should just try things out. I think it should be studied, make sure we're making the right decision before doing something, whether it be disrupting people's lives or whatever. We need to be conscious about the effects of the decisions that we make. Having said that, recently we've done some reorganizing in Public Works. We have combined the water and sewer departments under one supervisor. Still, frankly, still trying to decide if that's a good decision or if in the future we're going to need to split that apart again. And it's important. We want to make sure that neither department loses anything through these transitions and make sure that they all get the representation they deserve. But with this question, I want to take the opportunity to mention, I think we need to look at expanding our vehicle maintenance department. I think we have opportunities for saving. We have very skilled mechanics in Public Works. I think if we expanded that, we could save money with all of our fleet maintenance.
Okay. I believe the Illinois compiled statutes defines our departments in the commission form of government. So as long as we're in the commission form of government, the departments as they're outlined is Illinois statute. But that being said, the council has the responsibility to define what those departments do. And not having the inner details of the existing departments, one idea that I have is that I'd like to have an area focusing on just on economic development, outside of the current planning and zoning area, but just focusing and growing our city. And another one is the innovation team. I'd really like to see the innovation team, Mr. Decker mentioned losing IT staff, but the innovation team would be looking for ways to improve efficiencies internally and outwardly facing to our taxpayers.
Thank you. Our next question, our last question, we'll start with Mr. Sales. Why should citizens vote for you rather than the other candidates?
As most of the members of this council have been on there for 12 years, I think it's time for a fresh face. I believe that I am qualified with 37 years of business management experience. I'm a lifelong resident. I have a vested interest as I have a son that is now, him and his wife are expecting a new baby. I want East Peoria to grow and prosper so they can enjoy the great family life that I grew up here in East Peoria. I'm an open, honest person. I have no hidden agendas. I'm going to stand and represent all of the citizens of East Peoria, not just the select few that sometimes happens. And I will be very transparent and happy to explain any decisions that I would make in that capacity.
It's a tough one. I think I'm the only person up here that's a business person. That's my survival. That's how I do it. I own rental properties. I pay a lot of property taxes, too much. I think that if you're looking at that perspective, from my point of view, I have a saying that I bore people with. There's 25 roads to Chicago. None of them is wrong. It depends on where you're looking from and where you're coming from, where you want to go, and that's all the same direction. If you have a problem with not enough infrastructure being done, and if you have a problem with too much property taxes, and you have a problem with some leaders doing more than what I think aggressively they should here, then you're probably closer to my road. But I would vote for any one of these guys in a heartbeat, because we're all going the same direction.
I think that my experience both politically and professionally make me a strong candidate for city council. Professionally, as I said, I'm in the field of education where I've been a teacher, I've been an administrator, I'm a superintendent, which means I've been a member of a union, so I know that side of it. I negotiated contracts with my teachers, so I understand that. I propose a budget to my board, a budget that I have to follow, and a budget that sometimes makes me make tough decisions, and city council members have to do that. Politically, for the last 16 years, I've served the citizens of East Peoria on the Fond du Lac Library Board, Fond du Lac trustee on the Fond du Lac Township Board, and currently as a county board member, as well as on the East Peoria Youth Basketball Board. So I'm able to see things from the perspective of the management side of the city. I would also be able to see it from the perspective of being an elected official, and then knowing how some of the inner works of government and how some of the things such as contracts and bargaining agreements and levies and EAD and all of that affects what we would do.
Yeah, for the first time in 12 years, East Peoria will have a new mayor. That's just a fact. When you look at the 9 candidates on this stage, the face of the city council is going to change. There's guaranteed to be at least 3, if not 4 new faces on that city council. That city council will be changing or in charge of the future of East Peoria for years to come. And quite honestly, the key to the success of that city council will be having the right leadership. A firm believer that a good leader must be a good servant. And I would say that my actions throughout my lifetime, but more importantly, my actions throughout this community in the last number of years in the various capacities, both private and public sectors that I have served, demonstrate that I am that servant leader. And I think that's a quality that the next mayor will have to have. A vote for me on April 2nd will be our commitment together to making a difference in the lives that I will have the privilege of serving. And that means a lot. Thank you.
What I bring to you is myself. I've been on the city council the last 12 years, and I think one thing I do bring is 12 years of mentoring. Maybe doesn't know of it. 12 years of mentoring by Mayor Mingus. I will always be appreciative of the time served with him. But you know, I have a lifetime demonstrating actions and a willingness to serve and work with other people, like many of us out here on this table. 40 years on my church board and 15 plus years on the Christian Center board. I've enjoyed working with our youth group, youth club for 32 years, working with young children, serving them. And it's the same there as it is here in our families. I think that's very important to me. I think those that know me know that. I do also believe that staff, this is a itch why I think I can bring something to the table here. I think staff should really be empowered and free to do their job, do it right. And, you know, I want to be the right kind of mayor at the face of the city, to be honest and not embarrass you. And I'm prepared to work as many hours as needed to do this job, to do this service. And I do ask for your vote.
The good thing is I don't have to ask you to vote for me instead of someone else. I just have to ask you to vote for me as one of 4. I think I've done a good job the last 12 years. I worked very hard. My dad was a firefighter in the city, and I think it was him that gave me a love for this community. I don't even think he tried. Just taking me with him, letting me see him, not just at work, but throughout the community, speaking with the different people that he knew, gave me a pride for this city that I've always had. I've always been proud of being able to say that I'm from East Peoria. I work very hard. You'll see me sometimes out at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, looking at things that people told me about, whether it be road conditions or whatever. It's less traffic, it's easier to get around at that point. But I will always work very hard. I enjoy the city, I enjoy my position, I enjoy the people that I've met, and I'll continue to work hard for the next 4 years.
I was asked why I want to do this. I love the city. I've always been an ambassador for the city, and I believe in the city. The city's done some wonderful things. Done the same thing at the time, as we talked about today, we've neglected recently basic services. Our roads are deteriorating, and we've done some things financially that can improve. So I believe my 20 years of managing projects, planning, capital expenditure, on even being treasurer of nonprofits within the city, I can bring a devotion to the city, and I believe in it. My sole goal is to only make this thing a little better than when I found it. So I ask for your vote on April 4th.
I believe my experience both as in my career as a project manager for waste management, and then also on the various boards that I've served on, the largest one being on the East Peoria Community High School, allows me to realize that we have to work as a consensus when you get in some kind of group in a board, or in this case it would be in the commission. And you have to get a consensus so that we can develop a vision and then create policies that will bring that vision to fruition.
Thank you, gentlemen. Could we give a round of applause to all of our candidates? You'll notice there's a collective sigh of relief here, but no more sigh of relief than the two gentlemen sitting in the middle table, Mayor Mingus and Commissioner Densberger. Let's give those two men a round of applause. As an educator in this town for almost 28 years, we teach your kids to be informed, to be voters and active, but also even among this political climate that we experience today, to, even if you disagree with someone, to respect their dignity, respect their opinion, and to see that they all want to serve us. And I think when we look among this candidate today, and what you've heard out of all of them is that they really have a heart for this city. So let's give them one more round of applause, please. And the mayor said, I can say we're done. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate you.